Hey guys, Brian from Starlite Pulp here. Thanks so much for coming by. We appreciate it. Today we've had on the show so far. We've had a lot of writers. We've had some internet personalities. We've had musicians, but today we've got our first artist, and I'm really happy about that. So today we have Danny Galieote with us, and he's a Los Angeles-based artist. Representational stuff, pretty excellent. I'll pull a little bit from his website up, but Danny, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Brian. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, man.
Nice rainy day today. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me real quick about kind of a little
Mm.
bit of an origin story. I'm always interested in this, and the reason I ask is because when when we're young, a lot of times we have the opportunity to do a lot of different things, right? But nobody ever taps one of us on the shoulder and goes, you're an artist, you're a writer, it's not like if you're 6'7" and everybody says, oh, go play basketball. For us, it's a little different, right? So what was your kind
Uh,
of process there?
ever since I was a little kid, I was always drawing, and I just basically never stopped. That kind of cliche story of the artist. But, um, I grew up in sort of like a uh, 50s, 60s Westerny vibe because my grandparents, they all had kind of these properties with horses, um, and we used to go to the horse shows, and my dad did calf roping and all that because I was in that Westerny kind of atmosphere, but I also lived in the valley, San Fernando Valley, and I went to
Sure.
Notre Dame High School, and I was, involved in, football sports and all that. So I had kind of like, one foot in the modern, one foot in the
Hmm.
past kind of feeling. And, but I was always drawing. I just kept drawing and eventually developed my passion for the 40s and 50s, and I started bringing that into my artwork. Uh, I got into comics. I got
Sure.
into drawing from comics, and so I kind of learned a lot from just drawing on my own, copying, the masters,
Sure.
masters of comics, masters of Renaissance work. My background is Italian, so I always had like the Italian masters on my mind: Michelangelo, Leonardo,
Sure.
Raphael, and I was drawing from their work, from their paintings, from their drawings, and that developed into sort of a combination of those two worlds. The old
Right.
Renaissance world, and then the modern sort of. Uh,
Right. So a little bit Da Vinci, a little bit Jack Kirby and Frank Miller.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Bernie Wrightson, those guys. I would,
Yeah, there you go.
I would, study their drawings, and I was just in awe of their hatching, and um, the way they would get the form, the fluidity, and the rhythms of the figures. And um, I can tell you about the rhythm stuff because I used to teach at Art Center College in Pasadena.
Right.
I taught there for 7 years, but that was like the focus of my drawing class, was always talking about the rhythms and in the composition, rhythms in the body, rhythms in the figures.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so what does that mean? Because for me, obviously, rhythms would be in writing, and that would be obviously a very different thing. So for you, what does that mean? The rhythm in a
So,
piece.
well, literally, so our body is made out of such a high percentage of water that we have, like, if you look at a profile of somebody, you have the curve of the head to the back, to the front of the stomach, to the lower leg, and it kind of goes all the way down like this, the body.
Hmm.
And when somebody is sitting or doing something, there's always going to be sort of a opposing rhythm and action to the body's position.
I love that. Okay.
That's kind of and there's like interesting, kind of analogies that take place because there's always like the contrast, like in stories, right? You have the conflict and versus the resolution. So in the
Sure.
body, you have the straights and curves, things
Hmm.
opposing each other. So there's the opposing rhythms, opposing actions, straights and curves, and so I apply that to all my work, and
Excellent.
from that most simple idea into the most complex. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
And so you on your website at least you have the term, which I love the term, but you have pop American regionalism.
oh yeah, regional,
Uh,
regionalism.
so so explain that to me.
So yeah, regionalism was a movement in American art in the 30s, 40s. Thomas Hart Benton was the most well known.
Okay.
regionalist. He was on the cover of Time magazine, and I think it was 39. But there was Grant Wood. I don't know if you guys have heard of Grant Wood, Thomas Hart Benton, John Stewart Curry. These guys
Right.
were the main regionalists, and basically they were painting the middle of America, the everyday people,
Right.
working, and it came out of the Art Deco period of the 20s. So this kind of grew into this regionalist, middle America
Mm-hmm.
feeling, and also at this time, America was leading into World War II in the late 30s, early 40s, and so FDR came up with the Works Project Administration at the time, the WPA they called it, and
Okay.
hired artists to work on murals for public buildings, government buildings, and so Benton was one of the big guys that did those kind of big murals. And the thing
Right.
that they did with the regionalist work that I noticed that I loved was their design sense, and their design
Mm-hmm.
sense was very uh, kind of clear, sculptural. It wasn't mushy or wasn't impressionistic.
Sure. Right.
And so I really like was attracted to that regionalist look because they exaggerated, which I love. They would push the forms, like Benton was very wavy and rhythmic.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he would actually, on his murals, he would just do rhythmic compositional sketches and then do the drawings of the people into it later.
Okay.
And he would make sculptures and then light the sculptures and then paint from his sculptures, from the feeling that they gave. Um, so so that really kind of like is very similar to the Renaissance. Um, in fact, Benton studied the Renaissance artists very closely. So so that because of that, it really influenced my work. And so I started coming up with the idea of modern new American regionalism.
Okay.
So pop, basically, the
Right.
Americana,
Right.
modern Americana, modern regionalism. Um, and so I started doing things like these tough girls, these like femme
Right.
fatale girls. Uh, and the first one, so I'll step back for a second. So the first one I was doing was when I was a student, my art teachers, my painting teachers were always saying, paint what you know.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know best? Like, what can you, as an artist, we take from what we know best in our life.
Yeah.
And um, so for me, it was Santa Monica, the pier, the beach, and I love that kind of like gritty, um, you know, that vibe that in Santa Monica Beach. There's that kind of beautiful side, and there's that little bit of a gritty contrast.
Sure.
Um, so, and that was very similar to the regionalists and the ash can. You guys have heard of ash can, I'm sure. The Reginald Marsh, um, Thomas Hart Benton, um, these guys, Grant Wood, from that period.
Right.
Um,
And
so
and while you're talking there, Danny, I'm going to put a couple images up uh
okay, yeah,
that you're of what you're talking about here. So
yeah. So these are my beach. The sailors there are influences from my grandfather, who was my mom's dad, who was a big influence for me, and he was in Pearl Harbor and all that. And the under the pier, that Santa Monica Pier,
mm-hmm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of grew up with this sort of love of the Renaissance, that sculptural feeling of capturing the human body.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can see it.
Yeah, so that's kind of my huge influences are the Renaissance and also the 40s regionalists. You can call it the pulp covers. I love those too. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, so there's so many influences, but those are the main ones. There's Norman Rockwell, of course. You've heard of N.C. Wyeth, the
Oh, of
Wyeth.
course. Yes. Absolutely. Yep.
N.C. Wyeth, man, he's just like I just like love that guy's work so much. Andrew Wyeth too, and Jamie Wyeth, who's
Yeah.
still
Yep.
alive. Um, but it's to me it was all about solid drawing, solid draftsmanship, having a handle on what you're trying to convey in the figurative work.
Sure. You know
Make,
what? Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because um, you do mostly representational stuff, which I happen to be a big fan of. My dad, as you know, was an artist also, and he did mostly representational stuff. He did some stuff that wasn't, and he did some some abstracts and stuff. But
mm,
the I personally am a much bigger fan of the representational stuff, just because, and I know this goes against, trust me, it goes against most people that I know,
mm.
but the abstract stuff, the thing that always bothered me about it is or still bothers me about it, is I get the feeling like a lot of these people, if they had to draw a figure, couldn't do it to save their lives.
Yeah, I mean, uh,
And that bothers me.
one of the exceptions that I love Picasso,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
that he could really draw, like
you could.
if you
Yeah,
ever in his earliest work is like, wow. I mean, he's really skilled in his figurative work. But I don't know. Always to me, it was always learn the rules first.
yep.
Learn to draw well. Learn all the fundamentals, and then
Mm-hmm.
break the rules.
Absolutely. No, and I feel the same way though, Danny. I feel the same way about writing.
Yeah,
It's
break the
fine to it's fine to break every grammar rule you want to break, but
yeah.
know the rules first. Don't do it because you don't know any better. Do it because you know exactly what you're doing.
That's
You
like
know,
all art, right? I think all art
I think
forms.
so. Yeah,
um,
yeah, I think so. Know the rules first.
Fundamentals. The fundamentals are the base, and then from there you riff off and do your thing. What works for you, for your gut feelings, your intuition, and
Absolutely.
I could talk about that. But I learned a lot from being an animator at Disney as well. About
Right. So talk to me about that, because you said that you at one point you were in the internship program. Is that right?
I yeah, that's how I first started.
Okay.
When I was in my early 20s, and I was just getting out of art school, and or I was going to be getting out of art school, and I was starting to freak out. And how am I going to make a living? What am I going to
Sure.
do? I had to make some money, and so I just said, okay, I'm just going to draw best I can, and I'm going to get a job. I'll get a job doing something if I can
Right.
draw very well. So I
That
started going
that
to the,
by the way is the essential question for every artist. As real life encroaches, you start to go, okay, how can I make some money doing this?
yeah, the reality sets in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly.
and it's very possible though. Artists can make a living. It's just um scheduling, making a realistic plan.
Hmm.
I just started drawing as hard as I could. I started going to the zoo. I was drawing animals, and I was studying the best of the best. There was a book called Animal Drawing by Ken Holtgren, and he was an
Hmm.
animator Bambi at the time in the 30s.
Okay.
I found that animal book, the animal drawing book. It was like I became
Uh-oh.
was really into the antique book fairs.
Oh, okay.
Um, you're there? The kind of it kind of froze the screen.
Yeah, yeah, we're there. We're fine. We're
Um,
good.
I started going to antique book fairs and really into that, and I was studying as many of those classic old books that were out of print.
Sure.
I would go to these out of print. Uh, I would even start going online and try to find out of print art books to see how good they were.
Are
Got
you
obsessed.
are you talking about like the like the hard covers that were back in the
Yeah,
like 20s, 30s kind of thing where
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Um, and like just books that were made by uh, there was an artist by the name of Don Graham that was teaching at Disney at the time in
Okay.
the 40s, and he was friends with Walt and all that. And he had a book out, and I was like, I gotta find this book. And so
Right.
I just did what I had to do to get that book, and I got the animal drawing book. There was a series of books called the Famous Artist Course, and those were put
Okay.
out in the 50s, I think. And they had all the classic illustrators of the period: Robert Fawcett, Norman Rockwell, um, you know, Dohanos, all these guys that were the top illustrators of the 50s. Because
Very cool.
those guys seriously had the chops, in
Right.
terms of their skills. And uh, so I was like searching out and finding these books, and that's when I started just getting into just drawing like crazy, and I became an intern. I was picked. I don't know. They picked like 10 people out of 600, and I was like, I somehow got lucky, and I got chosen to go
Very
to
cool.
Florida. I went to the internship when I was 21, 22,
And
and
this is with Disney.
at Disney. Yeah.
Okay.
So I ended up going to the Walt Disney Studios in Florida for my intern at the time because that's where they were doing it, and but my home was always in LA, and I ended up um, coming back home, and I'm like, well, what do I do now? I don't know. I'm gonna get hired. They'll hire me. So 3 months later, I got hired on The Lion King, and
Nice.
so that started my career. It was about, I don't know, about 12 years. I became an animator shortly after that. Trained with the best animators at Disney, and that sort of opened up. Being at Disney opened up all these doors of
Oh, I can imagine.
knowledge. Because you're working with writers, you're working with directors, you're working
Sure.
with actors,
Sure.
painters, great animators, like Glenn Keane and these guys who are the best of the best, who did, Mark Hahn and Eric Goldberg. These guys did all the classic Disney
Okay.
movies.
Okay. And so at that time, you started with The Lion King? Did you work on a lot of the major ones at that time, which would be like Aladdin and the
Aladdin,
ones that followed?
um, Aladdin was right before I got there. I actually
Ah,
went to
okay.
in Florida. I went to the Aladdin party, actually, the rap.
There you go. There you
So,
go.
but when I came back here to LA, Lion King was just starting up. Um, so Lion King, Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Okay. Yep.
That's when I got promoted to animator. I did Clopan, the Jester, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules. I did Hercules. I animated young Hercules. Tarzan. I animated Turk, the Rosie O'Donnell voice. Uh, Tarzan, Atlantis, Rourke, the Sergeant.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Hunchback, Hercules, Tarzan, Atlantis, Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet. I animated Jim Hawkins, the boy,
Okay.
the kid.
Okay.
Uh,
So help me out here, just because I don't know, but I know that a lot of people that watch this won't know either. When you say that you're animating something, and then like you were mentioning like a specific character,
yeah.
is so when you were working on these, was it your responsibility to do an individual character kind of thing?
Well, so there was like a little bit of a hierarchy. So there was the supervising animator.
Okay.
Above them was the directors and producers, right? So
Sure.
the supervising animator was the guy who was helping sort of design the character, coming up with the form, and they were the main animator who would kind of dispense scenes to guys like me. I was one of the animators.
Sure.
Um, so there might be like 4 animators and
Okay.
a supervising animator. So I was one of the animators on all those movies.
I see.
So I would get scenes delegated to me based on my skills. They would say, "Oh, he's good at comedy scenes, or he's good at
Interesting.
action scenes, or he can do this monkey, the Rosie O'Donnell monkey, and make it, solid, jump around and talk." I had a good time with the dialogue and making, it's basically like acting out the scenes,
Sure. Yeah.
but with drawings, and so we had a mirror at our desk, and we had to kind of like make expressions and try to get that into our drawings, um, and make it live one frame at a time. Yeah, basically. So I was doing
Yeah.
the sketches.
Mm-hmm.
I was flipping the paper, 3 or 4 pages at a time,
Right.
and I would make it move from one frame to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're just constantly moving the papers off, animating, moving it, and then you'll
Sure.
you'll put it under the camera and you'll test it out. How is it moving? How is it squashing, stretching, acting, talking? And it's like magic,
Sure.
animation. The old
Sure.
school animation is like magic because you're making drawings live.
Yeah, and so explain that to me, just real quick, because if like, and there might not be a specific ratio here, I don't know, but if you are doing something like that, say a dancing, you mentioned monkey, um,
Mhm.
how long would it take to say that monkey is dancing around for say 10 seconds? How
Uh,
many frames would that be for you as an animator?
yeah. So the way it works is that it's 24 frames per second.
Cool.
So yeah. So on
Okay.
average, on average you do one drawing every 2 frames. So you'll have basically 12 drawings for 1 second.
Okay.
So, but there's different techniques in animation where sometimes you want to have some parts of the body move every frame, because you might have a slow body part here, and then the head might turn quickly. So
Sure.
you want that on every 1 frame.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah,
have to sometimes
I get that.
so you have to break up the animation from twos into ones. They call it
Interesting.
2 frames every 1 frame. So technically, yes, you can have you can have a drawing every 24, you can have 24 drawings per second.
Per second.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I would have had you given me an over under on that, I would have lost that bet badly. So anything over 10, I wouldn't have guessed that. So yeah, that's okay. That's
Yeah,
still
it's a lot of, that's why it's called, that's feature animation though,
mm,
there's TV animation. You ever see on TV like where you see just the talking mouth
sure.
just to save time and money? So they would sometimes just do like heads talking like and they're just,
Right, right.
but
Yeah.
Disney animation it's the feature quality, which is like most closest thing to reality, and
Uh-huh.
exaggerating movement, but it's close to reality. So they need every frame controlled, so
Excellent.
24 frames a second, that's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah, wow.
it was
All
crazy.
right.
Yeah, I did a lot of the scenes in um like in Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like, I don't know if you guys remember Clopan the gesture, and um
Yeah.
he was the gesture with the hat and the bells on him and all
Sure.
that.
Yep, yep, yep.
But there was a scene where he was dancing, and the King of Fools, and he was dancing on the stage, and he jumps off, does a twirl, lands, and then he had to I had to do the scene where he marched. It was a drawing that big, and it became this big, the drawing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I had to start off on a little tiny marching Clopan, got bigger and bigger until the paper I was flipping was actually 2 feet high.
Right, right.
I was flipping like bed sheets, and drawing.
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very
So
cool.
a lot of stuff I can tell you about that. Yeah.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so, so you've got well, first off, funny little question here because I have a thing, probably because my dad was an artist, I guess. I love art openings. I love going to galleries. I feel like, I joke with people, but I feel like I grew up at galleries and bookstores. Like that's how I feel like I spent my
Right.
youth. So you've had obviously a lot of openings, and then you've been to a lot of openings as well. So what do you think for you? I know it's a strange question, but I'm just curious. What
Mhm.
For you, where do you think your favorite or the best opening for your work has been?
Um, well, my present gallery,
Mhm.
Maxwell Alexander, it's called Maxwell Alexander in downtown Los Angeles.
Okay.
It really, the best, I would say, it comes down to having your best work up
Sure.
that you've done to that point in time, and having your friends, family, and collectors, people that you really love, you like, you respect,
Mhm.
coming to your work, and you all come
Of
together.
course.
And an exhibition basically is kind of like a celebration of,
Yeah, I can see that.
well, you've done it again.
Yeah.
You're alive,
Right.
you're
Right.
alive another year, and you're creating more art, and let's all celebrate and have a good time and enjoy art, and hopefully along the way we sell, and
Yeah, of course.
we make a living, and so like you can keep making art. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what the whole great thing about art is. And I would say, yeah, the best ones has been at Maxwell Alexander in
Okay.
Los Angeles. Yeah, because um
And you said that's downtown?
in downtown Los Angeles, yeah, near Grand and Pico, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And they've moved, but that's their most recent location, yeah. But they're
Did I see a while back that you had something up in the Bergamot Station area?
oh, that's Copro Gallery.
Okay.
I'm friends with Copro Gallery, Gary and Erica, the owners of that, and they're such cool people. They're great, and they asked me if I can do a put up something in their LA art show recently,
Very cool.
because the LA art show happens every year in the LA
Mhm.
Convention Center,
Yep.
And so they get a booth, and there's like 200 galleries,
Uh-huh.
at the LA Art Show. But yeah, so that was that. They asked me if I can, put in a piece in their gallery. So yeah,
Okay.
so I did one of my brass knuckle girls for them.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I'm real familiar with Bergamot Station. It's cool little area down there.
yeah, it's a very cool area. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love Santa Monica. Oh, yeah, yeah, you're from Santa Monica. Yeah.
Yeah. Little artist community down there. Although they've added what the metro thing there is like right there now. It's like right on the side
Right next.
of it. There used to be galleries there. Now it's the metro.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it used to be a train station, right?
I think so. Yeah, originally
So now the trains are kind of encroaching again,
coming back. Yeah.
taking over. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
What's old is new again. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I did gallery shows. Sometimes I have different galleries. I have one in Boston that I sometimes
Oh, very cool.
have work with, and that's Arden Gallery in Boston on Newberry Street, and they're
Okay.
awesome people. And I've had shows there, and I have another gallery in Laguna Beach, um, Joanne Artman Gallery. So, and that's where I show most of my beach type work.
Okay.
So just
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah. So
Okay.
Alexander, though, is my the primary gallery where I'm showing all my
Right.
my
Yeah.
pop regionalism and my regionalist work and my Americana West. And my last show actually in December was titled Americana West. And
Right.
uh,
Okay.
so
So
yeah,
real quick, talk to me about like we talked a couple minutes before we went on here, and we were talking about some of the themes you have, right? That are kind of consistent themes throughout your work. So you've
mm,
got the femme fatales, which I love; those are
yeah,
great.
yeah.
You've got the beach stuff, and then you also have the western. So why don't you talk real quick about how or why you gravitate towards those things? And
Yeah.
while you're doing it, I'm going to put a few of the images up.
Okay, so we kind of already showed some of the beach stuff. So the other things, yeah. So I as you know, I grew up at the beach. My beach, Santa Monica, um, and then I started, I grew up with horses also. So I had this kind of interesting, background where I grew up with, my dad. We had show horses. We had quarter horses in our back.
Okay,
So my job in the morning was to collect the chickens' eggs,
nice.
to brush the horses, to feed them, throw the hay into the feeder and all that kind of stuff. So I had this kind of, like I was saying, like one foot in the country in the old school, and then one foot in the modern. And
Right. Right.
and
And
I
and by the way, I just want to throw this out there, Danny. A
yeah,
lot of people have the mistaken impression that they're not from LA or around LA, and when they think of LA, they just think of city. And
yeah,
being an Angelino myself, and you as well,
yeah,
um, there's a lot of areas that have. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's beach and everything else, but we also have mountains, we also have horses, we have ranches. There's a lot of stuff in and around LA that is not just people think Hollywood,
yeah,
and that's a part of it, but there's a lot more to Southern California. So
yeah. And there's a San Fernando Valley, and that's kind of where I grew up. And
right,
I don't know if some of you guys might even remember, there was I forgot who sang it, but there was an actual song called San Fernando, Makes Sense, San Fernando Valley, My Home, in the 50s, 40s.
uh-huh.
And they talk about, the rolling hills, and it's just big open ranches. And
I'll need
so
to look that up. All right.
yeah, so my grandparents, my dad's parents, they had a big ranch home in the San Fernando Valley. And so I grew up going there, every Sunday, the big Italian dinners. And
Sure.
uh, we had horses and, you know, lots of dogs and, cats and all that. And so I grew up around horses and lots of Western movies as well. So I was really into
Sure.
the movies since uh, my grandfather was, they were from, um, they're Italian, but we grew up here in Los Angeles. We had a very Americana sort of Western upbringing
Sure.
because of all the horses and movies. There's, Lone Ranger, of course, Roy Rogers, Gene Autry.
Yep. Yep. Of course.
All these guys were like the center of my childhood, and they came from my parents and grandparents. And
And you
so,
can see that too in a lot of the art that you have created. You can see the mixture, like you said, of the post
Hmm.
Art Nouveau era,
Regionalist, yeah,
yeah,
mixed,
regionalist combined with the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s kind of aesthetic to it. You can
yeah,
see it, yeah.
yeah, and I just developed that just from my love um of that period. And I think like just with any art form, I'm sure everybody can relate to this, but we're attracted to things we love. Um,
That's it.
art, art is comes from for me. Art comes from it's all about the love. What you want to what you want to talk about, what you want to show, what you want to express in your work. Um, like in this piece is this was for Boston, and I had this cook, and she's saying it's ready, dear, or something like that.
Right. No,
Uh,
I actually love this one. Yeah, I
uh,
I'm not sure I'd seen this one before, but I have a thing about octopuses anyway,
oh,
and Cthulhu and all that. So no, that's awesome.
it's funny. Yeah, I wanted this like giant. It doesn't make sense that she would have it like that.
Right, right, right.
But it's just kind of a fun piece, and it's like this 50s, 50s, 40s sort of, idealism that with a little bit of a quirky sort of sometimes dark side, like in that piece with
Sure. Yeah.
the atom bomber. Um, and then I started doing things with the couple driving, and he's saying, signal properly, and he's, got the
Right. He's got the middle finger out there.
yeah. Um, so those kind of fun sort of like elements of the regionalist, I like to that's kind of where I got that sort of pop a modern regionalist sort of feel into the work.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and then you also have a little bit of I mean, I know we've touched on it a little bit with the Roy Rogers and Gene Autry stuff,
yeah.
and your grandpa in World War II, but the
Mhm.
your stuff definitely, and one of the things that drew me to it when I originally saw it on Instagram,
Yeah.
was the it has that 40s, 30s, 40s, early 50s feel to it
Hmm.
that I have kind of a natural inclination towards anyway. So,
Yeah.
but why don't you touch on that real quick?
Yeah. Just the 40s, 50s, like I was saying, the artwork from the regionalists, they designed their work for murals in
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the WK Works Project Administration. So they were creating things that were extensions of the deco, which were designed
hmm,
to be seen from a distance. So all their work had this kind of fluid sculptural feel.
sure,
That's kind of where the 50s, the cars in the 50s, the fins and
absolutely, of course, yeah,
those flowing lines, that's where they get it from the deco. It kind of extended from the deco, the rocket age,
I
and
get that, yeah, yeah,
uh, so I just love that stuff. It's just like a passion that we have, uh,
hmm,
and I totally identify with that. And so the style of the artwork had this sense of realism, but it was also designed very sharply and concisely to a point of I don't know. To me, it's like almost Renaissance sculpture, but uh, and it's to be seen from a distance. Like there's these murals, like there's this artist Reginald Marsh, these ashcan artists that were painting people of the period,
hmm,
30s, 40s, 50s. Uh, there was an idealism. There was like kind of that wholesome vibe,
right,
of the 50s. But at the same time, there was a little bit of the dark side to that. There's the film
sure,
noir, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
which brought into the femme fatale idea that I started doing. And um, so the figures are designed to be seen from a distance, and everything has a fluid, rhythmic gesture, um, and that's kind of what I think the 50s 40s feel comes from, is that it's a there's an idealism to the female figures as well. There's
of
the
course, yeah,
torso, the figures, um and then there's the male, figures with their, the Superman jaw, and the
of course, yeah,
the slick hair and all that stuff, and then
the
there's
dimple in the chin,
the dimple on the chin. uh yeah, there's all these ideals that kind of evolved during that period. um and that's some of the things that I put into my work are extensions of that, but I kind of, add my little twist to it and kind of mix in things I love, the NC Wyeth,
Yeah.
Norman Rockwell, which is, of course, everyone knows Rockwell, the classic Americana, the
Rockwell was great though. He's one of those that in my opinion anyway, he's easy to overlook because like you said, you've seen him so many times. So you've seen the Saturday Evening Post and all that those kind of covers so many times that it's easy to not really focus on the fact that they're really good. I
oh,
mean,
they're crazy. It took me, I don't know, until my mid 20s, um, till I was like, because before that I was studying J.C. Leyendecker. You guys
mhm.
know, so J.C. Leyendecker was Rockwell's hero. Rockwell actually loved
Okay.
Leyendecker, and he was older than Rockwell, and he lived um in New Rochelle, New York, and so Rockwell was actually friends with him, and
Mhm.
so I was like, man, who's this Leyendecker? So I started studying Leyendecker, and the design of Leyendecker is just mind blowing.
Okay.
And then to me, Rockwell took that amazing design and sort of made it his own, but in a way that was super tight realism. Because Rockwell worked from models, and
Right. Right.
he would be
Yeah,
intricate,
I knew that.
yeah, super tight, amazing drawings, and
Hmm.
he would have them, transferred to his, canvas, and he would start working over those. And his work, as we know, became the symbol of Americana, and he wanted
Oh
his name
yeah.
to be a household name, and that's what
It,
happened.
it was. Yeah.
Uh,
It is. Yeah.
so yeah, I became a huge influence for me, and I went to the Stockbridge Museum, Rockwell Museum
Yep.
in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and it was just mind blowing. I just such a huge influence for me, and
I
uh,
bet.
yeah.
I
So
bet.
it's the painterly quality to his work, the design quality, the storytelling, the narrative that he puts into his work.
Hmm.
Uh, is just so amazing and great. And yeah, I can go on about Rockwell, but yeah, he's one of my art heroes for sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna finish off. We're gonna finish up with this, and this is a question I ask all my
Mm,
guests. So there's somebody that's gonna see this, that's gonna watch this, and say he or she is 15 or 18 or whatever it might be.
mhm,
If you could give that person one piece of advice
mhm.
if they want to be an artist, what would that be?
Well, the one that I always go to, even now for myself, is trust your gut feelings,
Okay.
trust your intuition. Um, when I was an animator at Disney, for example, I would be working on a scene. 9 times out of 10, this would happen where I would be like struggling, struggling, struggling.
Uh-huh.
What am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? And I would have this little voice in the back of my head. What if I just turn this head a little bit that way? What if I put a blink or here? What if I did this?
Hmm.
And sometimes I wouldn't listen to that voice.
Right.
And then I would show it to the director, and they would say the exact thing that I had in my mind.
Right. Right.
And so I started like trusting my gut feelings and my intuition. Um, and so I started applying that to my paintings and to my
Hmm.
fine artwork. Um, and so I started, I just always try to trust your intuition, trust your gut feelings, um, and to don't give up on something. Things are hard,
Yeah.
making good anything good is
Hmm.
it's hard.
It is.
It's
It
hard.
is.
Any good story is hard to do, right? And
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about that with I had a writer on a few weeks ago, Nolan Knight, great guy, but he's an LA guy also, and he writes noir stuff. But we were talking about how, and in this case, it was writing. But the fact of the matter is, what you're doing at that point is you're creating something
Mhm,
from nothing
mhm,
and asking somebody else to believe it,
mhm.
and that's hard to do. Regardless of if it's film or photography or painting or writing, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's making anything um, that's really good takes a lot of preparatory work. It takes a lot of preparatory thought and planning and knowing what you want. You might have a feeling of what you want, but then it's going to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
That's where
Sure.
trusting your intuition, trusting your gut feeling,
Yeah.
it comes in. So to me, that was like a huge one for me, was to be able to learn how to trust my gut feelings
Sure.
and
Huh.
add that, to your repertoire of your tools and what you love. And that would be the other thing, is of course to do what you love,
Yeah.
what you're passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean that speaks towards the kind of work you do, because you include so much of your influences, and I don't even necessarily mean artistic influences, although those are there, but also just the fashion influences and the time influences and all that, the era influences, just like I do with my writing, which is, I mostly write in the 40s and 50s. And a lot of the stuff that you have painted is, at least from a symbolism standpoint, of that era. So
Extension of that, yeah, like
yeah,
yeah, mixing that in. I think it's
yeah,
important
yeah.
in what
So
you
yeah,
love.
I mean, so it's one of those things where it it finds its way into the work, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? So
I think we can't help it. I think
yeah.
um, if you're like a young artist, you're developing your skills and your tools, but believe it or not, you probably have a pretty good idea of what you love. I think
Exactly.
so.
Exactly.
Trust your gut feelings on what you really love, and like I was saying, love is the main thing. You're sharing this love with people. How do you want to inspire people? Um, like Guillermo del Toro, he loves the horror movies, and
Hmm.
he puts that out there, and they're beautiful. So
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually been watching. He has this Netflix series, Cabinet of Curiosities.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit like like the old crypt, Tales from the Crypt kind of
yeah,
series back in the. It's similar to that, where it's like a modern day horror, Twilight Zone kind of, little serialization, but it's cool.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
lot.
I've always loved his work. I started
Mhm.
watching the earliest thing with the Scarab. What was that movie called?
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, 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 yeah.
There's that one that I first saw from him, and I
Yep.
was
I
like, man,
forget what the name is, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
yeah, but
And then he went into Hellboy, and the Hellboys were a lot
yeah,
of fun.
yeah. I mean, so things you love, sharing that, expressing it from the biggest, movie people to painters to writers to, I think it's
Yep.
all about that. Trusting your gut feelings, what you love, your intuition.
All right.
It's
Awesome way to end it, dude. So hang out with me for a minute, and then everybody else, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. This is episode what is it, 13, I think, for the Starlight Pulpcast, and submissions for the summer review are open right now. They're not going to be for very long, just another couple of weeks, I think. So if you have submissions, get those in, and make sure to go to DannyGalieote.com. It is Danny, DANNY GALIEOTE.com. Okay, DannyGalieote.com. You'll see a lot of this guy's work. He's pretty excellent. And as you do stuff in the future, Danny, when you have shows coming up and stuff like that, let me know, and I'll go ahead and promote them too.
yeah, yeah. Tell them I post a lot of stuff on Instagram, my most recent things and shows. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, man. So hang out for a minute. Everybody else, see you soon.
In this topsy